Welcome, Flowgraders, to another episode of the Flowgrade Show, where I'm seeking out high-performing individuals to inquire about their methods to reach the state of flow. For those who don't know, flow is the optimal state of consciousness, which is actually measurable, where you perform at your highest, where time dilutes, where your ego vanishes, and where you feel the most alive. So far, I've interviewed Bulletproof Coffee creator Dave Asprey, CrossFit legend Kelly Starrett, best-selling author and flow expert Stephen Kotler, and Superman actor Brandon Routh, among others. Today is no exception. I have another very special guest in meditation expert and Siva meditation founder, Emily Fletcher. Emily is a Broadway star turned meditation teacher who's now instructed at the Harvard Business School, at famous companies such as Google and Coca-Cola and many others. And I'm very excited to have her on this podcast. She projects so well that this is actually great that we have a video podcast. And Emily can not only teach you how to learn meditation, how to get into meditation, but she also is very knowledgeable about the principles, the underlying workings of the biochemicals working in your brain. So now listen to this episode and find out what meditation can do for you and how you can achieve more flow in your lives with meditation. Here's Emily Fletcher. I'm going to say hello, Emily, and thank you so much for being on the Flowgrade Show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and it's been a couple of weeks now that we've actually met in person at the Bulletproof Conference, and I participated at your actually question and answering session after your presentation, and you got a lot of great feedback, and I'm really excited now to present you to our audience. And you have such an interesting personal story how you got into the field, because now, I mean, you're all over the place, a meditation expert and speaking, teaching at Harvard and all these great companies. And I think our audience, they're not so familiar yet with where you came from and how Emily Fletcher actually became this figure in meditation. And you were actually at the other end of the spectrum, a quite, I think, stressed person on Broadway, an actress,
yes,
and performing a lot. And could you tell me that story again?
Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty unlikely journey of Broadway showgirl to meditation teacher. So I was on Broadway for 10 years, which was incredible. It's what I wanted to do since I was a little girl. And strangely, I got there, and after my first Broadway show, it was the saddest I'd ever been. And so it was very confusing to me why I was living my dream and miserable. So I learned at a pretty young age that I was more interested in the happiness of pursuit than I was the pursuit of happiness. But, I was 22 when I got my first, Broadway show. And so I just felt like my goal had been taken away from me. And so I didn't understand really why I was sad. So I just thought, well, my happiness must be in the next Broadway show, or the next one, or the next boyfriend, or the next agent, or the next zero in my bank account. And I did that for 10 years. And then finally, my last Broadway show was A Chorus Line, which won the Pulitzer in 1975. It won like all the Tonys that year. It's the one with all the gold leotards, wow, people kicking in the line. And it was incredible, but I was understudying 3 of the lead roles, which basically means that you show up to the theater and you have no idea which character you're going to play. And sometimes I would start the show as one character, and halfway through they would switch me to a different character. Or I would just be chilling in my dressing room doing my taxes, and someone would get on the intercom and say, "Emily Fletcher, to the stage." And I would start panicking because I wouldn't know which costume to put on. So I would just grab all 3 of them, run down 7 flights of stairs, and then I would literally be on stage sometimes before I knew which character I was going to play.
Oh, wow.
Which is nuts. So it's basically in a constant state of fight or flight. My adrenaline levels were increased. My cortisol levels were increased. And I remember this one moment, I was in my dressing room in between shows listening to Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, like on audiobook, and just like rocking myself in the corner in total disbelief that I had to go out on stage and put myself through what felt like torture. So anyway, this girl sitting next to me in the dressing room, she was understudying 5 of the lead roles, which to this day, I don't know how she did it because it's very challenging. Some people are great at it. I'm not one of them. But this woman was rocking it. I mean, every song she sang was a celebration. Every dance she did was a celebration. Every bite of food, she'd be like, "Oh, this is sensational." She was Australian, and I know the Australians tend to be pretty happy anyway, but she was extra. And I said, "Look, how are you doing this so elegantly? How are you doing this without freaking out?" And she said, "I meditate." And this was almost 10 years ago. So I was like, what? Come on. And she's like, no, seriously, it helps my creativity, my stress, my performance anxiety. And I didn't believe her, so I just kept, being miserable. And so here's the other thing that was happening to my body is that I started going gray at 26 years old. I started having insomnia. I couldn't sleep through the night for 18 months, and I was getting sick all the time. And so, basically she told me about this meditation thing. I didn't believe her, so I just kept being miserable, kept going gray, kept sucking at my job. And then finally it got so embarrassing that I said, I have to try something. So I went along to this intro to meditation talk in New York City. I liked what I heard. It made sense to me. So I signed up for this 4-day course. And on the first day of the first course, I was meditating. I had no idea what that meant, but I was in a different mental state than I had ever been in before. And I liked it. And then that night, I slept through the night for the first time in 18 months. And I have every night since, and that was almost 10 years ago. And then I stopped getting sick, and then I stopped getting injured, and I started enjoying my job again, and I stopped going gray. And I was like, wait a minute, why does everybody not do this? So I left Broadway in 2009. I went to India, and I started what became a 3-year training process to teach this. People think that it's like they're like, oh, that's cute, you're a meditation teacher, or they liken it to a yoga certification, which it's not that there's anything wrong with yoga certifications, but most of them now are like 200 hours. Whereas what I did was 3 years of pretty intensive, like learning Sanskrit, transcribing books by hand, apprenticing my teachers. It's a little bit more akin to getting a PhD in the Vedic sciences. And to be honest, if I had any idea how intense it was going to be, I never would have started. But now that I'm through it, I'm so thankful that I did. And so I opened up Ziva. I'm here at Ziva in our studio in New York now. And I opened this up about 4.5 years ago. And it's been the single most rewarding, creative, incredible thing I've ever done. I love it so much.
Now, congratulations. I think your success and the people that you reach and you change lives, that speaks for itself. And I'm really inspired too by it. And I started meditating actually not too long ago. But maybe to clarify a little bit, I think some people, and they asked me before, how does meditation fit into yoga or vice versa? Like what is the actual difference, or how does it play a part in each other?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So there are a lot of people that would say that yoga and meditation are the same thing. But the way that we interpret them in the West, they're different. Because what we would call yoga in the West would actually be an asana practice, which would actually be like the poses, up dog, down dog. And so the word asana actually means seat. It's a Sanskrit word that means seat. So each asana is preparing the body to become a seat for consciousness to sit in. And actually, and I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but I heard that yoga was actually originally designed for 17-year-old boys who couldn't sit still and meditate. So you would move through the series so that they could sit at the end and meditate. So if you think about it, Shavasana, where you're lying down, it means corpse pose. So you're actually practicing dying. And that scares some people, but it's really beautiful. It's like you practice this little mini transcendence to prepare for the ultimate transcendence, which is kind of happening when you meditate. You're not dying, but you are slowing down your nervous system, and you're waking up your right brain. So you're moving beyond the left brain, which is identified with individuality and the thing that dies when this body dies. And then you start to wake up the right brain, which is identified with connectedness, the collective consciousness, the thing that allows you to be in flow state, and also the energy that lives on beyond when your body dies. And so while it might sound a little morbid or macabre, it's actually a really liberating and can be, I would even say, a performance enhancing tool, because it is the thing that allows you to get into flow state. But that's probably a different question.
Well, that is, I'm actually going to get into that in just a second. But one more thing, because I asked you actually at the conference what you would think of apps such as Headspace, which I'm using right now for mindfulness meditation. And that sounds actually quite far away from what you just described, this transcendence moment feeling that you have. And actually, I think if I remember right, your words were, well, Headspace is really cool, but it's sort of a small river in a large sea or something like that. Well, and that's why I just wanted to know how do you get into this more transcendent? I think mindfulness meditation and transcendent meditation are actually two different things, right? And how do you get from the one to the other?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I think Headspace is great. I think that their user interface is incredible. I think that Andy is very smart and he's actually done the work. He
Yeah.
knows a lot about meditation, and I think that the design of it is beautiful and people want to use it. And I'm really happy that it exists. And I think that millions of people are meditating in a way that they wouldn't be if that didn't exist. So I'm really thankful for it. But Andy was a monk, right? And so he practices mindfulness. So here's the thing to know is that, especially as meditation's getting more popular, it's like we're all just calling it just meditation, period. But the word meditation is like the word sports or like food.
Mm.
Playing golf is very different than playing football. Eating a cheeseburger is very different than drinking a chia seed smoothie. So while we can use meditation as an umbrella term, I want people to understand that there are thousands of different styles of meditation and they do different things to your brain and body. So I would love for us to collectively get a little bit more specific with our vernacular around these techniques. So thousands of different styles of meditation. Most of them, if we're going to really simplify it, most of them fall under two categories. One would be mindfulness, which is actually derivative of practices that were made for monks, right? So if you think about the Buddha was monastic. And most mindfulness practices have been, pulled from Buddhism in the way we're practicing right now. So in India, which is where all this stuff came from originally, you're either a monk or you're something called a householder. And if you're a householder, it basically just means that you have a busy mind and busy life and you live in society. Like you like to have sex with people, you like going to work, you maybe want to have kids someday. Whereas if you're a monk, it's less than 1% of the world's population that is monastic or reclusive by nature, and they know it by the time they're like 10. They're like, I gotta go live in the cave. However, mindfulness is a bit more gentle, right? And this was news to me when I first started learning about it because I thought, well, whatever monks are practicing, it must be so much more powerful because they're monks, right? They must be like vibrating or levitating or something. But it's actually the other way around. Monks are meditating basically all day. That is their contribution to society. So they can afford to do a practice that's a little bit more gentle. Whereas if you have a job and kids and stuff to do, and you live in society, you have less time in your day with which to meditate. So you actually want to do something that is even more powerful. That's going to go in and really clean house, give your body deep, deep rest so that you can be the most amazing version of you when you're awake and not meditating. So lots of different styles of mindfulness. What I teach at Ziva, it's so like the foundation of what I teach at Ziva is Vedic meditation. Vedic comes from the Sanskrit word Veda, which means knowledge. And it is a 6,000-year-old practice, but what's unique about it is that it was actually made for people like us. So people find it much more easy to practice. People find it very enjoyable. And they also find that the body lets go of stress very quickly, which can be lovely. It's powerful because it's up-leveling your body very quickly, but it also, it can be very intense. Like when I teach people face-to-face, there's a period of what we call unstressing, right? And it's basically the body detoxing. And not that many people are talking about it right now. And so it's a conversation that I also like to have because I believe that the body is a perfect accountant. I think nature is a perfect accountant. And so every Taco Bell you've ever eaten and every Coke you've ever drank and every all-nighter you've ever pulled and every time you've ever been hungover, like all that stuff is stored in your cellular memory. And when we start meditating in the style that I teach, you're giving your body rest that's somewhere between 2 to 5 times deeper than sleep. And that's not an insignificant point because when you give your body that deep rest, it knows how to heal itself. And one of the things that it heals itself from is stress. So that's great, and it's going to make you perform at the top of your game, but in the first couple of days and weeks, oftentimes people get very tired, they get very emotional, a little cranky, a little sad, a little angry, because it's like a lifetime of repressed stuff starts to come up and out. And that's really my job, is to help people through that, and just to remind them that they're on track, or to adjust their program and make fart jokes and things like that.
So how does Vedic meditation, when people hear that, what can they understand under it? What's like one specific example of a technique that's, let's say, particular to Vedic meditation?
So sort of like the special sauce and the thing that makes it so easy and so powerful, I like to call it the lazy man's meditation, because you don't have to do an hour and a half of yoga. You don't have to chant. You don't have to do a ton of breathing or focusing. It's all about surrendering. It's all about letting go. And when people learn, if they learn in person, then the course is 2 hours a day for 4 days.
Oh,
And
wow.
basically, what I do is that I train people to be self-sufficient meditators. I don't teach a one-day meditation course. I don't like to do drop-in guided sessions because while I can do it, it's not going to provide any long-term healing in the person because you have to meditate every day. You know what I mean? It's just like exercise or brushing your teeth or sleeping, and the benefits of it are cumulative. So what I do is that I train people to be self-sufficient, and so basically I give people the key to the car, which in this case is a mantra, right? So the mantras that we use in this style of meditation, they're meaningless primordial sounds. And so it's not, a lot of people think a mantra is like, I'm a strong, angry woman, or like, I want $1 million, or like, love and peace and gratitude, which is all fine, but those are slogans, right? Those aren't mantras. These mantra is a Sanskrit word. Man means mind, and Trap means vehicle. So what we use is we use these mind vehicles to de-excite the mind. And as the mind settles, the body settles. As the body settles, the mind settles. And then we access this very deep rest, or this fourth state of consciousness, which I would call like the bliss field or transcendence or the absolute. And but it is the technique of simplicity and effortlessness, and then the mantra that you receive from your teacher that helps to induce this very healing state of consciousness. And then the idea is that once you move through the course, then you just practice it on your own, moving forward.
So actually the Om sound, right? This is the most common used, that's called a mantra as well, right?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So you're right. Om is a mantra, and it is the mantra that contains all other mantras. It is not OM, it's actually AUM. It's Aum. It's the alpha beginning and the end. But the thing to know about Om is that it's a monastic mantra. And so if you or I were to start chanting it all day or be using Om, Om, Om as your mantra, you might find that you give your car keys to your best friend or give the deed to your house away or start giving away all your clothes because it starts to wake up these sort of reclusive monastic parts of you. And then you get a little like disattached from society and you're like, bye. So it's not the best mantra to use for people like you or I.
Ah, okay. Interesting. And this actually leads me to the next topic, and you mentioned that before, the flow state. And you said that you can help, and my brand is called Flowgrade, not Upgrade, but Flowgrade, because we are the balanced self-optimizers. This is our sort of selling point. And so I'm really interested in how you would describe how meditation can help people achieve more flow in their daily lives, because that's a constant challenge, I think, for everybody.
Yes, this is such a good question. And to me, it's the name of the game. It's why we meditate, is so that you can start to be in flow. You can start to listen to how nature is using you, which is actually what flow is. But so let's talk about the brain first. So left brain, right brain. Okay, so I know this is a gross undersimplification or oversimplification, but for the purposes of this talk, I think it'll be fine. So left brain is in charge of the past and the future. It's in charge of critical thought, analytical thought, math, balancing the checkbooks, all really important activities. But for most of us, we've been taking our left brain to the gym for a very long time. Think, take action, achieve, make money so we can be happy in the future. And then our poor little right brains are over here atrophying. Right, our poor little right brains are like, but I have ideas, I have creative solutions. And the right brain is the piece of us that's in charge of the right now. It's in charge of creative problem solving, music, intuition, present moment awareness, creativity in general, color. All these things are right brain activities. And because most of us in the West worship money so much, and our left brain is so developed that we're constantly reviewing the past and rehearsing the future, reviewing the past, rehearsing the future, which is antithetical to flow state, right? If you're stressing out about everything that happened to you in the past and predicting how likely you are to have those bad things happen to you again in the future, which is the left brain's job, then you are robbing yourself of being present in your body in the right now. And the present moment is where your bliss and fulfillment hang out, right? It lives in one place and one time, right now and inside of you, right? But the thing is that most of us don't have tools to access it because we're all running around stressed out in this fight or flight stress reaction. So what meditation does is that it goes in and it de-excites the nervous system in a way that creates order, right? And you start to get rid of this lifetime of accumulated stresses. The other thing that happens is that you start to light up your right brain. Okay, so you actually start taking your right brain to the gym. So I went to a neuroscience conference about 3 weeks ago, and it was really cool because I got to see like hundreds of brain scans. So imagine you have a brain, right? And
Hmm.
there's 4 quadrants. Okay, so in waking state, these 2 quadrants light up, and these two are dark. And then in meditation, these two light up, and these two go dark. So you actually have a different brain when you're meditating than you do in your waking state, which I think in and of itself is pretty cool. But people are like, how is that going to make me in flow state? How is that going to let me sleep with the hot girl? How is that going to get me the raise at work? How is that going to get me a better car? And here's how. Because after time of regular practice every day of meditation, waking state, meditation, waking state, meditation, waking state, what starts to happen is that the whole brain starts to light up at the same time. You start to increase your brain elasticity, and you start to strengthen something called the corpus callosum. So the corpus callosum is the thin white strip that connects the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And we've known for a long time that meditators have thicker corpus callosums than non-meditators, but we weren't able to prove if it was causal or correlated. Now we know that the longer you meditate, the thicker this thing becomes, which is, again, a pretty cool party trick, but who cares? Why do I want a fat corpus callosum? Well, everyone should, because it quite literally is the bridge that allows you to be in a high demand, stressful situation and simultaneously having access to your creative problem solving, to those ideas, to the thing that amounts to having a flow grade life, which is actually you listening to your gut, right? Getting these little cues from nature and then taking action on them. But it's not a conscious thinking process. It's not a left brain pro con process. It's just like, you know what, my gut's telling me to turn right. Or if like you were skiing, it's not, you're not thinking about which way to go, you're just feeling it. Oftentimes athletes will say the game is playing me, or actors will say the scene is acting me, and that's right brain. That's when nature is using you as a vessel. And that is what I'm very interested in. This concept of surrendering, right, is really what I teach. I teach people how to surrender in the chair. And then once they do that and it feels good, then they actually are braver, and have a little bit more positive reward to allow themselves to surrender in their waking state.
I see. So are there different techniques for people with different goals though, or is it one solution to improve every aspect? For example, if there's one person that says, I'm particularly interested in being more focused, or there's one person that says, I'm more interested in being more relaxed or having better sleep, or is it one approach, or are there different ones?
I mean, it depends. I mean, obviously, I'm 100% biased, and I think that if you're not a monk, then it doesn't make all that much sense to practice monastic styles of meditation. I think that if you are a householder, maybe you want to do a style of meditation that was made for you. But that said, there's tons of science out there about how good mindfulness is for you. And so the two things that I think mindfulness actually is better at than Vedic meditation is pain management and focus, right? So when you practice mindfulness, a small part of the brain lights up, but very, very bright. Whereas when you practice Vedic meditation, the whole brain lights up, but not as bright. And so Vedic meditation would be better for like creativity, present moment awareness, flow state, intuition, healing your immune system, better sleep, better sex, like all these things are going to come. But mindfulness, I would say, for pain management and for focus, mindfulness might be better. Because what mindfulness is doing is that it's basically the art of bringing yourself into the present moment, right?
Interesting. And I think, by the way, I'm sold. I want to try Vedic meditation now.
So good. It's so good.
But what I've noticed as well, I've done recently 60 days in a row of mindfulness meditation.
Great.
And
Good for you.
it helped me because one thing that I noticed about myself is I have a hard time sometimes focusing. I have a lot of ideas and I run around and I do this and that and this and that. And that helped me sort of to focus more. But I thought that I felt at the expense of my creativity. I thought that I'm actually giving up some of my creativity for more focus. And that scared me in a way where I said, okay, maybe meditation helps me in some way when I need to be more focused, but I actually stopped it again after 60 days for a while again, because I like being bothered by a lot of thoughts sometimes. And it helps my creative process.
I mean, I think the reality is that we need both, right? We need focus, we need the ability to execute, and we need access to these creative downloads when they come. Because I really believe that our ideas are not our own, right? Think about when your last great idea, it just sort of popped in. You're in the shower, or you're writing, or you're talking to your friend, you're like, oh, yes, let me write this down. It's like, but then we want to take ownership for them, but they're not really ours. But it is your right brain that is responsible for receiving those downloads. And so when you start meditating, you're taking that right brain to the gym. It's like you're strengthening that vessel. You're tuning your dial to the channel of creativity and bliss and fulfillment. But mindfulness is great too. I mean, there's I think any meditation worth its salt is going to bring you back to the most amazing version of you, right? The thing that we all need to understand is that they're drastically different roads to get there. So if you're trying to practice mindfulness while you're doing like a Vedic meditation or a self-induced transcendent style of meditation, you're going to give yourself headaches and you're going to feel like you're failing. If you try to surrender and just let go when you're practicing mindfulness, it's not going to feel all that effective. So my recommendation is that if people find a teacher and a style that's working for them, that they really give it the time and just spend the time really becoming an expert in it before you try 14 different styles of meditation all at once. It's like digging a lot of 3-foot wells and then being surprised that you don't hit water. Mm-hmm. And once you understand one technique, then if you want to try another one and add that into your practice, fine. And then you can start to mix and match. Like what I'll do is I meditate twice a day. If I'm not teaching, then I'll do 20 minutes twice a day of Vedic meditation. Wow. And then, which sounds like a ton, but actually because the mantra makes it so easy, it's so enjoyable. The time goes really quickly, and then I need less sleep because of it. Like I've shaved 2 to 3 hours off of my sleep at night, and I'm a ton more productive. So the return on investment is so worth it. But I'll do like my regular meditation practice, and then afterwards, if I want to do some sort of visualization, which I would put in the mindfulness category, or breath work I'll do beforehand. Or actually, what I teach at Ziva is after every meditation that people take a time for gratitude. So it's important that when you finish a meditation that you come out slowly, that you're not just like ping and you open your eyes and you bang into activity, because it's a little shocking to the brain and the optic nerve. So once we, put down the technique, I encourage people to keep their eyes closed for a while, and I encourage them to use that as a time for gratitude. So every day for at least 4 minutes a day, because 2 minutes after my morning and 2 minutes after my evening, I'm basically just going through and giving thanks for everything I can think of, which is also really powerful.
That's actually one point also I wanted to address, because you wrote an article, I think for the Huffington Post even, about gratitude. And what I really like about that as a biohacker is that you went into the biochemistry, why gratitude actually makes sense from a biochemical perspective. Because I think everyone understands, okay, feeling grateful for your life, it will probably put things in perspective in a way, and you start seeing things differently. But maybe you can go into that really quickly, how feeling grateful actually changes your brain chemistry.
Yeah, so the interesting thing that I learned recently is that, because we all know, it's like, yes, we should give thanks, but it feels like sort of like an old, simple, hippy-dippy thing of like, yeah, I get it, I should give thanks, I should write thank you notes, but I don't know who has time for that. I have money to make, I have hacking to do. And it's one of these really underrated techniques, but here's what I learned, is that if you have a gratitude practice, even if you can't find anything to be grateful for, just you asking the question is enough to change your brain chemistry. And this was fascinating to me. I mean, it kind of blew my mind a little bit.
It is.
Right? Because we always think like, but I don't have anything I should be thankful once I get that job, once I get married, once I make $1 million, then I'll give thanks, right? But even if your perception is, I don't have anything to give thanks for, when you ask yourself the question, what you're doing is that you're training your brain to start to look for what's going right. And then you start to put your attention on everything that's going right. And then you're basically watering the flowers instead of watering the weeds. The thing is, most of us are very adept in this day and age at looking for problems to solve, right? Because we're not happy, we don't have access to our own bliss and fulfillment, so let me solve the problem. Let me fix it. And then we're constantly looking for what's wrong. And it's basically like watering the weeds, putting our attention on everything that we think we need to fix. So just asking yourself this question, what am I grateful for right now? And even if it's simple, like I have air to breathe, I have food to eat, I have a bed to sleep in, I have people who love me. There are a lot of people in this world a lot of people in this world that cannot say the same. And the reality is there's always something to be grateful for. Oprah, I know you have the gratitude journals, but Oprah,
Yeah, the 5 minute journal.
the 5 minute journal. So Oprah says that starting a gratitude journal is the single most powerful action she's ever taken. And so,
Yes, I love it. Like I started it. UJ Ron does. He was at the biohacking conference last year, and he spoke about it, and I got really interested, and I bought a couple of books, and I gave them away, and they were such uh, great gifts. People loved them.
good.
So I decided I'm gonna import it now. It's in English language, but that's in Germany quite fine. But it's just great, and I write it down every morning now. 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I do think it just forces your mind to think about positive things, and that's a great start to your day.
Hmm.
Great. And now switching gears one more time, one more topic I want to hit with you is, and I know you're knowledgeable about that because you started a project about nutrition.
Mm.
So, first of all, what is your diet? Are you bulletproof?
I would call my diet um, paleo-veda.
Okay, what is that?
So basically, if I eat meat, I try to know where it's from and know that it's grass-fed and have it be as clean as possible. If I eat eggs, I try to eat eggs from chickens that don't eat soy. Um, and it's not paleo or even really bulletproof. Well, yeah, we can talk about that in a second. But definitely eat a lot of raw fat, which is sort of bulletproof. But basically, my big source of raw fat is raw dairy. So in the US, I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the US, unpasteurized dairy is illegal because of the state of the disgusting
Yes, same here.
commercial dairy farms. It's like instead of solving the problem of having our milk contaminated by blood and pus and infection, which happens from giving cows hormones so they overproduce milk, and then milking them with steel machines, which makes their udders bloody and pussy, which is disgusting to even say, but I think that people need to know what's going on. Then that goes into the milk. And so instead of solving that disgusting problem, we basically just pasteurize it, which means that we heat it up to something, I don't know exactly, but I think it's like 10,000 degrees or something very hot. And when we heat it up, when we pasteurize it, it kills all of the active enzymes in the dairy. And then your body can't digest it. That's why so many people are lactose intolerant. It's why dairy causes so much skin issues and inflammation because the body doesn't know what to do with it. But actually, if the cows are eating what they're meant to eat, if the cows are eating grass, if they're not being given hormones, if they're being milked by hand, and you know where your dairy is coming from, then it's totally safe to drink and eat unpasteurized dairy. And then it becomes a really beautiful source of raw fat and almost like pre-digested grass. So your body's getting these nutrients from the grass, but it's not costing you so much to digest it. But I basically, because it's illegal here, I basically have like a dairy dealer, like a drug dealer. Like they come to my house and I pay them in cash, and I have a
Wow.
little cooler full of dairy, and I'm so thankful for it because I can get grass-fed meats and all kinds of really beautiful products.
Wow, yeah, we have a similar situation here in Germany where you can get them from the farms, but they have regulations which forces also protein powders to be heated up and pasteurized and so on. And I know, for example, that there are a couple in the States that are cold pressed somehow. I mean, there are sometimes ways around it, but the Europeans are quite strict in general too.
Yeah.
What do you think about raw milk cheese? Is that something you would eat as well?
Yeah, I do. I eat a lot of raw grass-fed cheese, like organic grass-fed raw cheese. Organic raw grass-fed butter is amazing to put in bulletproof coffee. The thing to know about if you're going to use raw dairy is that you don't want to cook with it, right? Because it's raw. So if you put raw butter in your frying pan and fry with it, it's no good. You want to use coconut oil or ghee to heat and cook with. But you could melt your cheese on something. Like if it's a warm soup, you could melt your cheese on top. Or if you had like your coffee, once it's a drinkable temperature, then you could put the raw butter in it so it's not cooking the dairy. Because the thing is, raw fat is very good for you. Like your brain runs almost exclusively on EHAs and DHAs. And this is interesting. When people start to meditate, it's like they're taking their brain to the gym in a way that it hasn't ever gone to the gym, and they get very hungry in the first few days. And so what I tell them to do is eat a ton of raw fat. Otherwise, your body's going to suck that fat up, from your body and make you kind of dry. And you're also going to want to eat like a whole pizza or a whole pie or something. So like eat an avocado, eat some raw cold pressed oils, A teaspoon of coconut oil or something will be fine. So yes, but what also happens when people learn to meditate is that their bodies get a bit more sensitive, right? Because as you detoxify your nervous system, you become more sensitive to what's going on. So oftentimes people's like their desire for caffeine goes down, their tolerance for alcohol goes down. Foods that they maybe didn't know they were allergic to, sometimes an allergy will show up because they're more sensitive, which sucks in the short term, but in the long term, it's like, well, good, you need to know that so that you can get it out of your diet. So we actually created a program called Ziva Eats, which is basically like Ayurveda 101. So Ayurveda is like the sister science to Vedic meditation. It's again a 6,000-year-old science from India, and it's basically the art of using meditation, exercise, and food as your medicine. And you're basically eating to bring your body into balance. And in Ayurvedic medicine, there's 3 different body types, or what we call doshas. And so you're basically eating for your particular body type and for the season, and eating locally. And it's really changed my life. It's like the meditation kicked things up a notch. And then when I started eating Ayurvedically, because if we think about our bodies like a chemistry set, which I know that you do, like every bite of food you eat, every thought that you think is impacting your chemistry. And so I think there's sort of 2 ways into this like flow grade life or this bulletproof life. You can.
I love that you said flow grade.
Oh yeah, just work. It's like I think you can absolutely get your state of consciousness to a state where you can eat whatever you want to, where your digestion is so strong because your brain is functioning so optimally that you can basically afford to eat whatever. I think you can also get your digestion and your body chemistry so balanced that it uplevels your state of consciousness. But my take on it is, why not do both? Right? Like the brain and the gut are definitely impacting each other. So let's work on both at the same time.
I love it. I have to check it out. I have not looked at Ziva Eats yet.
We're just releasing it like this week. So it's on our website, which is zivameditation.com. And this is just /Ziva Eats. But yeah, everything's at zivameditation.com.
Great. Actually, Emily, I want to also ask you a couple of questions that our audience. I put out a tweet and a post today asking people to ask you questions that I'm going to ask for them. And they're sort of rapid fire, so I just throw them out at you. And one would be, do you meditate before or after coffee?
Before.
Definitely
before. Yeah, because here's the thing. If you, especially at least in the style that I practice, right? Because if you have a thing of coffee, which caffeine is very similarly, it's not rapid fire. I don't do anything rapid fire.
Okay, no. No.
But this, I gave a whole talk at Google on this, and it was called "Why Meditation is the New Caffeine." So I really am very passionate about it. But here's the thing: caffeine is similar, very similar molecularly to a chemical called adenosine, and adenosine is what your brain produces to tell you that you're tired. And so basically, the caffeine is blocking your brain's adenosine receptors so that you don't know that you're tired. So then when that caffeine goes away, you've got all that adenosine circling the brain, and it comes in, and that's why we can be more tired afterwards. So basically, the caffeine is artificially hijacking the nervous system, disallowing you from feeling how tired you are. Now, in the style of meditation that I teach, we utilize these mantras and these techniques to give your body rest that's even deeper than sleep. So if you have caffeine and then you go to meditate, it's going to feel like you're having civil wars inside. You're going to feel like you're having panic attacks, and then you're going to quit.
Okay, wow. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Great. I love it. Okay, definitely before then.
Yeah, definitely before. Now, there are some monks that will do it before practicing mindfulness, like if you're focusing for hours and hours and hours, but that's a very different style.
Okay, so actually now reading through the questions, I see that we answered pretty much most of them already through the whole podcast so far, but one interesting one is about lucid dreaming. And if you have experienced it, or if you can somehow talk about it and how meditation helps maybe with experiencing it.
Yeah. So here's the thing about lucid dreaming. I personally have never done it, but I have quite a few clients who have, and they do report that it's a little similar, and that they're sort of in between, right? They're like in between waking and sleeping. But here's what I do know, is that every time we transition between waking state and sleeping, the body moves through about a 30-second window of transcendence, right? So This is also why some people think that they're falling asleep when they meditate, because they're actually falling into this fourth state of consciousness. They're falling into transcendence, but it can feel very much like sleep. So that's a big part of what I teach as well, getting people to know what's the difference between the two. But basically, the body already knows how to do it. We only do it for a second. We touch it for a second when we move between waking and sleeping. Now, what people do when they lucid dream is like set an alarm at like 3 and 4 and 5. So they're basically waking themselves up when they're in their deepest point of sleep so that they can dance on that cusp. And so the idea there is that you're sort of controlling your dreams a little bit. It's like you're directing your dreams so that you can have a mental experience of something that you haven't yet experienced in your waking state. Now, what I do is that while I give people the tools to cultivate that sort of in-between state of consciousness, it's not about controlling. It's not about planning out or using that time to execute on something. It's more about giving your body a different kind of rest. So they're similar and different, but to be honest, I'm curious about it. I'd have to try it out more so I could speak more intelligently about it.
No, great. I mean, this is already. I think it's a fascinating subject. I have not tried it, but this is already something here. Actually, tied to this one, there's another interesting question about what is happening in a float tank. Can that be called meditation?
So, like a float tank is like a sensory deprivation tank, and I think it's very high density saline water so that your body floats. They get the water to be the exact same temperature as your body. It's completely dark. I think you're wearing earplugs, so there's no sound. So basically, you're not smelling anything, you're not tasting anything, you're not touching anything, you're not seeing anything, and it's all about sensory deprivation. So I've never done that either, but again, I have clients who have, and they say that it's really cool. But the thing is that what I teach, just sitting in a chair and using this mantra and having the instruction will induce this different state of consciousness where you're sort of moving beyond this physical body. You're moving beyond your senses. And it's almost like you induce that sensory deprivation yourself. So I don't really feel, well, I'm curious about it and I'll probably try it just for curiosity's sake. I don't feel like I need that because I have this little respite. I have this technique that allows me to dive inside every day, twice a day. And at the same time, flooding my brain with dopamine and serotonin, which are bliss chemicals. So I feel like on the other side, I'm all like refreshed and rejuvenated. But I'm fascinated to try. It seems to me like all of this stuff, like binaural beats, sensory deprivation tanks, like EMDR, it's all basically people trying to replicate what happens in meditation.
Yes. Have you actually done the 40 years of Zen thing?
Not yet, but I'm curious.
I'm very curious now too because Dave, the last time I talked to him, he's like, this is the one thing you have to do. And I said, well, I have to sell a lot more coffee to do that. He's like,
Well, if you let me know and we'll go together.
yeah, I'd love that. Let's do that. Okay, but I'm gonna go through the questions because I know you are a busy woman too. And there's one more. What are your techniques when you're in a stressful situation and you quickly need to calm down like your monkey mind? What is your emergency technique?
Yeah, so there are some times where just shit happens and you're like, whoa, and you don't have the time to go and sit down and do a full meditation. And so what I would recommend is something I call the 2x breath. And I actually, I go through this in pretty great detail. I made a video course for Mind, Body, Green. And it's basically guided visualizations for all different high demand situations like public speaking or sex or a first date or a negotiation or an interview. So it's basically very specific breathing techniques and guided visualizations for different high demand situations. And in almost every one of them, I'll do some sort of breath work. But probably the easiest and the simplest is something called the 2x breath, which is basically you're just in for 2, out for 4. In for 2, out for 4. And you're basically doubling the time of your exhale than your inhale. And that helps to slow down your vagus nerve. And if you really are amped, you can do it while you're walking. So you're like in for 2 steps, out for 4 steps. In for 2, out for 4. And then even if you're pacing around the room or if you take a walk, it's just... And it's simple, but you do like 10 of those and then you're going to be fine. You're going to be back in your body, back in the right now.
No, that's a great piece of advice. Sometimes the simplest things are the most effective ones.
Yeah, totally.
Very cool. Thank you. Okay, one more. Some people report seeing geometric shapes when they meditate. Is there an explanation for why that happens?
Yeah, so different people experience meditation in different ways, and they also, I would call this unstressing, right? And the body will unstress in any number of ways. Some people are very visual when they meditate, some people are very oral, some people are very tactile, and that actually depends on your Ayurvedic body type. People who are Vata dominant, like you or I, which is like air and space, very like tall, thin people, we tend towards visual. Pitta people, which is like fire, like medium build people, they tend towards oral, meaning sounds. And then more Kaphic people, which is like a very like weighted, like big boned, strong of the earth kind of person. They tend towards a more physical experience in the meditation. But it's all good. You can totally just enjoy the laser light show. If you're having all sorts of images, shapes, just enjoy it. Notice it, enjoy it, and then when you notice that you're off of whatever technique that you're using, then you would just float back to the technique. But the thing is, just like we have, just like you can imagine something in your mind, like what we see, we're actually processing that in our brain. So just because our eyes are closed, the brain can still see things. And oftentimes, if you've ever seen like one of those hippie trippy, like mushroomy lava lamp type videos, like they're making an outward picture from something they've experienced on some sort of a drug trip usually. And so when you meditate, you oftentimes are on some sort of a trip. It's just that it's an organic chemical induced trip versus a synthetic chemical induced trip. So that's really all that is.
Wonderful. I think, hey, by now everyone is sold on trying meditation. And looking at you, it definitely works because you're radiating. I've seen you on stage. I mean, you influence people.
Thank you.
And maybe now, for the last little cherry on top, you can give a couple advices. Like I'm sure a lot of listeners, they would like to start right away. And maybe you have your 3 or 5 steps how they could, without a teacher right now, sit down and experience this first step into meditation.
Yeah. So the thing is that there are tons of visualization practice and breathwork techniques and mindfulness techniques that are available to you right now. There's stuff on YouTube, there's apps, and all that stuff is out there. My recommendation would be for that stuff is that you find a teacher that you respect, right, to try it out. What I teach it's no joke. Like it's pretty powerful, and the ideal is to learn it face to face. But if you can't, then I actually created the world's first online meditation training, which I'm really proud of. It's called Ziva Mind, and it's 8 days of video training. So each day it's about 15 minutes to 20 minutes a day, and each day builds upon the previous day. And even though it's video, it does teach you to be a self-sufficient meditator. You receive a mantra. There's a beautiful online forum. There's Q&A calls. There's guided visualizations for traveling and sleep and stress release. So that would be my recommendation. If people want to get started and they seriously want to learn, I would go to zivamind.com. But let's say you don't want to do that. You're like, I don't want to invest my time. Just tell me what to do. I would, first say, we get out of things what we put into them. And this is your brain you're talking about. So let's saddle up. It affects everything in your body. But if you want to just try something, you could, next time you want to meditate, sit with your back supported and your head free, and then close your eyes and take about 30 seconds just chilling, and then gently, ever so softly, pick up the word one, almost like an anchor, right? One is not a mantra, but it's like dipping your toe into meditation. I like to call this the M word technique, right? So you're just thinking this word one ever so gently in the background of your mind. Know that you're absolutely allowed to have thoughts. When you notice you're off on a little mental field trip, you just gently come back to the word one. And I would say do that for about 5 minutes. And then afterwards, have a timepiece near you. And then afterwards, you could do a few minutes of gratitude before you open your eyes.
Wow, very cool. I want to try that. And I'm also definitely going to check out zivamind.com. Mm-hmm. And I'll put it in the show notes, everything that you've mentioned as well, so they'll find it. Emily, at this point, I just want to thank you so much. You're such a great podcast guest. This is wonderful.
It's a joy to have you, and it's nice to reconnect with you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you. This is awesome. And I know that you, I think, have to run pretty soon, so I don't want to steal any more of your time. But Just let me tell you again, thanks.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. All right, bye.
Bye, Emily. This is it with another episode of the Flowgrade Show. Thank you very much for listening or watching, and I'll see you next time.